Ambassador Tom Walker stood at the massive window of the Galactic Council station, watching the strange purple clouds of the Nexus Nebula swirl in the distance. His reflection showed the dark circles under his eyes, evidence of the very weakness that made him and all humans objects of ridicule in this place. The council chamber doors slid open with a soft hiss. Walker took a deep breath and walked inside. The circular room held representatives from 23 spacefaring civilizations, but the sleepless dominated everything. Their tall, silver-skinned forms occupied the highest seats, looking down at everyone else with their gleaming purple eyes that never closed. "Ah, the human representative finally arrives," said High Counselor Rex, his metallic voice carrying a hint of amusement. "Did you need another one of your rest periods?" Quiet laughter rippled through the chamber. Walker kept his face neutral as he took his seat, one of the lowest in the chamber. He had learned to handle their mockery with grace over the past 2 years. "Yes, High Counselor, we humans find that sleep helps us think more clearly," Walker replied calmly. He opened his datapad, pretending not to notice the knowing looks exchanged between the sleepless counselors. "How fascinating," said Counselor May, her silver skin shimmering under the chamber's lights. "To waste a third of your life in unconsciousness. It's remarkable your species managed to achieve space travel at all." Walker remembered his briefing from Earth Command. "Don't let them get to you. We're playing the long game here." He smiled politely and focused on the agenda for today's meeting. The main discussion centered on expanding trade routes through the Outer Rim. As usual, the sleepless dominated the conversation, proud of their ability to work continuously without rest. Their ships never needed to stop for crew changes. Their facilities operated around the clock with the same personnel. To them, this was proof of their superiority. "The human colonies will need additional time for their trading operations," Rex announced to the chamber. "They must account for their sleeping schedules." More subtle laughter followed. Walker raised his hand to speak. "We've adapted our colonial operations to maximize efficiency despite our natural cycles. Our automated systems—" "Yes, yes," Rex interrupted, waving a silver hand dismissively. "You've developed machines to compensate for your limitations. Very creative. But surely you see why the Council cannot grant humans the same trading rights as more capable species." The words stung, but Walker had expected them. Earth's reports showed that the sleepless treated all other species this way. Any race that required rest periods was considered inferior by default. "We understand the Council's position," Walker said carefully. "However, human traders have consistently met their quotas despite our different biological needs." "Different is a polite way to put it," Counselor May added. "Primitive might be more accurate." Walker watched the other alien representatives shrink in their seats. Some of them needed rest too, but none dared challenge the sleepless. The silver-skinned aliens had dominated galactic politics for so long that their way of existence was considered the only correct one. As the meeting dragged on, Walker noticed something interesting. While the sleepless talked endlessly about their superior productivity, he saw subtle signs of strain in their movements. Counselor May's hands trembled slightly when she gestured. High Counselor Rex had to repeat himself twice during one statement. Small things, but Walker's diplomatic training had taught him to notice such details. The humans might need sleep, but when they were awake, they were fully alert and focused. Looking around the chamber now, Walker wondered if working without any kind of rest was truly as beneficial as the sleepless claimed. He kept these thoughts to himself as the meeting concluded. One day, perhaps, the sleepless would learn that rest wasn't a weakness. But for now, Walker simply gathered his materials and headed back to his quarters for a well-deserved nap. After all, tomorrow would bring another day of subtle mockery and diplomatic challenges. At least he would face it with a refreshed mind and body. Something his sleepless colleagues couldn't claim. The emergency alarms on the Galactic Council station blared to life at what humans would call 3 a.m. Earth Standard Time. Ambassador Walker pulled himself from his bed, quickly putting on his diplomatic uniform as red lights flashed through his quarters. He wasn't the only one rushing to the council chamber. the halls filled with representatives from all species, but the Sleepless moved fastest, their silver skin reflecting the emergency lights as they hurried past. Inside the chamber, High Counselor Rex stood at the central podium, his usually perfect posture slightly bent. Behind him, a massive display showed a swirling mass of energy at the edge of known space. "We have detected an anomaly in Sector 7, Rex announced, his metallic voice carrying a note of concern. "Our initial readings suggest it's unlike anything we've encountered before." The display zoomed in on the phenomenon. It looked like a tear in space itself, pulsing with strange purple and black energy. Data streams scrolled across the screen, showing readings that made several scientific advisors gasp. "The anomaly is growing," Counselor May reported, standing beside Rex. "It's already consumed 2 uninhabited systems, and our calculations show it will reach populated worlds within 3 months." Walker watched as the sleepless scientists presented their findings. The anomaly seemed to bend the laws of physics themselves, creating waves of energy that disrupted both space and consciousness itself. But something was off about the presentation. The scientists kept pausing, losing their train of thought. "We have dispatched our best research vessels to study the phenomenon," Rex continued. "The Sleepless Science Division never rests, and we will solve this crisis as we have solved all others." The first research ship reached the anomaly 2 days later. Walker sat in on the live transmission as the Sleepless crew began their investigation. At first, everything seemed normal. The silver-skinned aliens worked their stations with their usual efficiency, taking measurements and running tests. Then something strange happened. "Captain," one of the crew members said, "I'm having trouble focusing. The numbers keep—" "What was I saying?" The captain himself swayed slightly at his post. "Continue the analysis. We don't need rest. We are—" "What was our mission again?" Walker leaned forward, watching closely. The entire crew seemed to be struggling. Their movements became jerky, uncoordinated. Their speech patterns broke down. "Emergency transmission from Research Vessel 1. A communication officer announced to the Council. They're reporting widespread cognitive disruption. The crew is experiencing memory gaps." The Council chamber erupted in concerned whispers. The Sleepless had never experienced anything like this before. Their continuous consciousness had always been absolute, unchanging. "Send in the second research team," Rex ordered, but his own voice wavered slightly. "We must understand this anomaly." The second team faced the same problems. Then the third. Each ship that approached the anomaly reported the same symptoms: confusion, loss of focus, and an inability to maintain continuous thought patterns. Walker noticed that the effects seemed to hit the Sleepless worst of all. Other species reported headaches and disorientation, but they could still function. The Sleepless, however, became almost helpless when exposed to the anomaly's energy. "The anomaly appears to be expanding faster than initially calculated," a scientist reported, her hands shaking as she presented the data. "At current speeds, it will reach the first Sleepless colony in 6 weeks, not 3 months. High Counselor Rex gripped his podium tightly. "We will solve this. We must solve this. We are the Sleepless. We do not rest. We do not." He trailed off, staring blankly at the display. The Council watched in shocked silence as their leader seemed to lose his train of thought completely. Walker exchanged glances with the other human diplomats present. They had all noticed the pattern. The closer to the anomaly, the worse the effects on Sleepless minds. Their greatest strength, their continuous consciousness, appeared to be becoming their greatest weakness. As the Council dissolved into worried discussion, Walker began composing a message to Earth Command. Something told him humanity's experience with sleep and mental rest might soon become very valuable indeed. The Galactic Council station buzzed with attention Walker had never felt before. In just 2 weeks, the mysterious anomaly had grown large enough to affect even distant Sleepless colonies. The proud silver-skinned aliens were starting to crack. Another ship collision in Sector 4, reported a frantic communications officer. The sleepless pilots. They forgot how to dock. Just forgot. Mid-approach. Walker watched from his usual seat as reports flooded in from across sleepless space. Their mighty civilization, built on the power of endless consciousness, was falling apart. In their factories, workers stopped mid-task, forgetting what they were building. In their research centers, scientists lost years of knowledge in moments of confusion. High Counselor Rex called an emergency session, but even he looked unwell. His silver skin had dulled, and his usually sharp purple eyes seemed unfocused. We must. Rex stopped, staring blankly at his notes. What was I saying? Counselor May tried to step in, but she stumbled on her way to the podium. The situation is... What situation? I was just... Where am I? The other council members watched in horror as their leaders struggled to complete simple sentences. The sleepless didn't just need rest now. Their minds were shutting down from the strain of fighting the anomaly's effects. 3 more colonies have lost all production capability, announced a junior officer, his voice shaking. The workers can't remember their training. Emergency systems are failing. They need immediate assistance. The proud, sleepless empire was crumbling. Ships drifted in space, their crews too confused to pilot them. Vital facilities shut down as workers could no longer perform their duties. The continuous workflow that had been their society's foundation now worked against them. There were no replacement crews, no shift changes, no one to take over when minds started to fail. Walker received urgent messages from Earth Command asking for updates. The humans watched the crisis unfold with growing concern. Other species in the Council had already started offering help, but their efforts made little difference. The sleepless brain structure was too different, too specialized for continuous operation. Perhaps, Walker suggested carefully during one chaotic session, it's time to consider some alternative approaches. But the sleepless leaders who could still think clearly refused to listen. Their pride remained strong even as their minds weakened. Then came the day when the first major sleepless city went dark. Total system failure in Capital City Prime, the emergency broadcast announced. All operations ceased. 2 million citizens affected. No response from city control. The images from the city showed chaos. Sleepless wandered the streets in confusion, unable to remember where they lived. Automated systems crashed as their operators lost focus. The mighty towers of the sleepless capital stood dark and silent. In the council chamber, Rex tried to maintain order, but his own condition was worsening. We cannot. We must not. What was I? He swayed on his feet, then collapsed. May rushed to help him, but stopped halfway, her face blank. Who am I helping? Why am I standing? Walker watched as the most powerful beings in the galaxy reduced to confused shells of themselves. The anomaly's effect grew stronger each day, and the sleepless had no defense against it. Their minds, engineered for endless operation, couldn't handle the disruption. Ambassador Walker, a young sleepless aide, approached him, fighting to keep his thoughts clear. How do you humans, how do you handle the stopping and starting of consciousness? How do you keep working after periods of nothing? It was the first time any sleepless had asked about sleep without mockery in their voice. Walker looked at the aide's desperate expression and saw the same look reflected on every sleepless face in the chamber. The mighty sleepless civilization was facing complete collapse, and for the first time, they were ready to admit that perhaps, just perhaps, humanity's weakness might hold the key to their survival. Walker pulled out his communicator. It was time to call Earth. The sleepless needed help, human help, whether their pride was ready for it or not. Ambassador Walker sat in his office, reviewing the latest crisis reports when his door chimed. To his surprise, High Counselor Rex stood outside, looking worse than ever. The once proud, sleepless leader's silver skin had turned dull gray, and his purple eyes darted around nervously. Ambassador, Rex said, his voice barely above a whisper, "May I enter?" Privately. Walker quickly cleared his desk of papers. Of course, High Counselor. Please sit down. Rex moved to the chair but missed it on his first attempt, nearly falling. Walker helped steady him, something that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. The mighty Sleepless never needed help with anything, until now. This conversation. Rex started, then paused, fighting to keep his thoughts straight. This conversation never happened. But I, need to ask about sleep. Walker kept his face neutral, though inside he felt a mix of pity and satisfaction. What would you like to know? How do you recover? When you wake up, how do you remember who you are? How do you continue existing after periods of nothing? Rex's questions came out in a rush, as if he feared losing his thoughts again. Sleep isn't nothing, Walker explained gently. It's when our minds process information, heal themselves, and prepare for the next period of consciousness. Rex leaned forward, desperate. But you're not aware. You're not in control. How is that not terrifying? It was terrifying for our ancestors, Walker admitted. That's why we still have night lights and bedtime routines. But we learned to trust the process. Sleep isn't our weakness. It's our mind's way of staying healthy. The High Counselor's hands trembled as he placed a data pad on Walker's desk. Our scientists estimate total societal collapse within 2 weeks. The anomaly's effects. They're getting worse. Most of our outer colonies have already gone dark. Walker reviewed the data. The situation was worse than he'd imagined. Entire sleepless cities had shut down. Their mighty space fleet drifted aimlessly, crews too confused to operate their ships. Their civilization was literally forgetting itself to death. Rex stopped, his pride fighting his desperation. The Council needs. Yes, Walker prompted gently. We need human help, Rex finally managed. Your people understand mental rest. You know how to stop and restart consciousness safely. Each word seemed to cause him physical pain. Walker nodded slowly. Earth has been preparing for this request. We have sleep specialists, neurologists, and rest cycle experts ready to help. The Council will officially ask tomorrow, Rex said, standing unsteadily. But I needed to. He trailed off, staring blankly at the wall. High Counselor. Walker touched his arm gently. Rex blinked rapidly. Yes. Sorry. The Council meeting. Tomorrow. Please help us. After Rex left, Walker immediately contacted Earth Command. Within hours, ships filled with human sleep experts, doctors, and scientists were on their way to sleepless space. Humanity's greatest weakness was about to become the galaxy's most valuable resource. The next day's council session was the shortest in history. The mighty Sleepless, who had once looked down on all other species, formally requested human assistance. Their pride finally broke under the weight of necessity. The human delegation has our complete cooperation, Counselor May announced, having to read from notes to remember her speech. We submit ourselves to their expertise in mental rest cycles. Walker stood to address the council, remembering all the times they had mocked humanity's need for sleep. But now wasn't the time for revenge or gloating. Now was the time to help. Earth accepts your request, he said simply. Our experts are already on their way. We will teach you how to rest. The room fell silent. The mighty Sleepless Empire, brought to its knees by its own relentless drive to stay awake, would now have to learn what every human child knew. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is close your eyes and rest. Dr. James Reed stepped off the Earth medical ship onto the Galactic Council station, carrying technology that would have seemed laughably simple just a month ago. Sleep monitors, white noise machines, and meditation guides. Behind him came teams of sleep researchers, carrying what might save an empire, pillows and blankets. The humans bring beds. A confused, sleepless observer asked, watching the supplies being unloaded. Tools for mental recovery, Walker explained, standing beside Dr. Reed. Each one tested over thousands of years of human development. The first challenge came in the medical bay. The sleepless had never built beds. They had never needed them. The human teams had to convert storage rooms into sleeping quarters, adding soft surfaces and dim lighting. The brain patterns are fascinating, Dr. Reed said, studying the readings from their first volunteer patient. The sleepless mind is like an engine that's been running too hot for too long. It needs a cool-down period. The volunteer, a young sleepless scientist, lay stiffly on the bed. His purple eyes darted around in panic. How do I? What should I? Just close your eyes, Dr. Reed instructed gently. Listen to the sound of my voice. Let your thoughts slow down. The monitors showed the first success 3 hours later. The sleepless scientist's brain patterns finally shifted from their usual frantic pace to something slower, calmer. When he opened his eyes again, his mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. I remember. He sat up excitedly. I remember who I am, what I do, and I feel different, better. News of the success spread quickly through the station. More sleepless came forward, desperate for relief from their failing minds. The human teams worked around the clock, in shifts, of course, teaching aliens how to do something they had never done before: rest. The anomaly's energy creates a kind of mental static, Dr. Reed explained to the council, pointing to his research data. In humans, sleep naturally clears this static. The sleepless brain can do the same, but it needs to be taught how. High Counselor Rex, who had finally agreed to treatment himself, nodded in understanding. His silver skin had regained some of its shine after just 2 rest cycles. And this, sleep, it really makes you stronger. Think of it like maintaining a machine, Walker added. Even the most powerful engine needs to cool down sometimes. The human teams developed a treatment plan. First, they taught the sleepless how to relax their minds using meditation techniques. Then, gradually, they helped them experience longer periods of rest. Each successful treatment brought back more of the patient's memories and abilities. But not everyone accepted the help easily. Some sleepless refused to try sleeping, seeing it as admitting defeat. They quickly became examples of what happened without treatment. Their minds deteriorated until they could barely remember their own names. Recovery rates are highest in patients who fully embrace the rest cycle, Dr. Reed reported, showing brain scan comparisons. Those who fight against sleep take longer to heal. The breakthrough came when they discovered how to temporarily dim the sleepless's natural mental energy. A combination of sound therapy and specialized lighting helped their minds shift into a rest state naturally. Walker watched from the observation room as another group of sleepless experienced their first real rest. Their faces, usually tight with constant activity, relaxed. Their breathing slowed. Their minds, finally, got the break they had needed for thousands of years. They look peaceful, he remarked to Dr. Reed. They are, Reed replied, checking the monitors. Many of them report having their first dreams. Imagine an entire species discovering dreams for the first time. The success on the station led to expanding the treatment to sleepless colonies. Human ships carried sleep experts and equipment to every corner of sleepless space. Humanity's weakness was becoming their greatest export, the knowledge of how to rest, recover, and grow stronger. And as each sleepless learned to close their eyes and trust in sleep, they began to understand that true strength sometimes means knowing when to stop and rest. 1 month after the first successful sleep treatment, the Galactic Council station had transformed. Halls that once buzzed with constant activity now had quiet periods. Rooms that never went dark now had dim cycles. The sleepless were learning to live in a new way. Walker walked through the station's main control center, now operating on what humans called shift work. As one group of sleepless controllers finished their duty and headed to the rest chambers, another fresh group took their place. The transition is smoother than expected, reported the new control room supervisor, his silver skin gleaming after a full rest cycle. Our efficiency has actually increased since implementing the human rest pattern. The biggest change came in the military fleet. Sleepless warships, once proud of their endless operations, now ran on strict sleep rotations. Each ship had been retrofitted with rest quarters, and crews worked in 3 shifts, just like on human vessels. "Our pilots are more alert," the fleet commander told Walker during an inspection. "Their reaction times have improved, and they remember their training better after rest periods." But not everything went smoothly. In one of the larger sleepless colonies, a group of traditionalists barricaded themselves in a government building, refusing to sleep. They broadcast messages about maintaining their species' purity and rejecting human weakness. After 3 days without rest, surrounded by the anomaly's effects, they forgot why they were protesting in the first place. Dr. Reed's teams had spread across sleepless space, teaching rest techniques and helping communities adapt. They found that younger sleepless adapted more quickly, while the older generations struggled with the change. "It's like learning a new language," Dr. Reed explained during a council update. "The young learn naturally, while others need more time and practice." The sleepless began to discover unexpected benefits of rest. Artists reported having creative insights during their rest periods. Scientists found solutions to old problems in their first dreams. Children learned faster when their lessons included breaks. "I had it, dream," High Counselor Rex announced during one session, sounding amazed. "I saw patterns in the anomaly that we hadn't considered. When I woke, I knew how to adjust our containment fields." His discovery proved crucial. The adjusted containment fields, inspired by a dream, finally began to slow the anomaly's spread. The very thing that had nearly destroyed the sleepless, their mind's need for rest, was now helping them solve their greatest crisis. Sleepless cities changed too. Buildings that never had windows now installed light-dimming systems. Parks that were always full now had quiet hours. Construction crews worked in shifts, making developments take longer but resulting in fewer mistakes. Our society was like a computer running too many programs at once, Counselor May admitted to Walker. "We never realized how much better things could work with proper rest cycles." The sleepless even began to develop their own sleep customs. They created special rest chambers with silver-toned lighting that helped them relax. Some started wearing sleep garments decorated with traditional sleepless patterns. They weren't just copying humans. They were making rest their own. Education changed dramatically. Young sleepless now learned about both active and rest periods as natural parts of life. Schools operated in shifts, and students learned the importance of mental recovery alongside their other subjects. "Look at this," Walker said to Dr. Reed, showing him a video from a sleepless elementary school. The children were having their first nap time, something that would have been unthinkable just months ago. The Sleepless Military Academy even added a new course, Strategic Rest Deployment. Officers learned how to manage their crew's sleep schedules for maximum effectiveness, treating rest as a resource to be used wisely. As Walker watched the sleepless civilization transform, he remembered all the times they had mocked humanity's need for sleep. Now that same need had given humans the knowledge to save an empire. The sleepless were becoming stronger not by forcing themselves to stay awake, but by learning when to rest. Their civilization wasn't becoming weaker, it was becoming wiser. 6 months after the first sleepless learned to rest, Ambassador Walker stood before the Galactic Council for a very different kind of meeting. The chamber, once filled with mockery of human weakness, now held a celebration of human wisdom. The anomaly had finally been contained. Through a combination of sleepless technology and human-inspired rest cycles, the mysterious force that had nearly destroyed an empire was now just another managed phenomenon in space. High Counselor Rex, his silver skin now permanently restored to its bright shine, stood at the podium. His purple eyes were clear and focused, thanks to his regular rest schedule. "Today, we honor those who taught us a truth we were too proud to see," Rex announced to the packed chamber. "Our belief in constant consciousness wasn't strength, it was arrogance. The humans showed us a better way." The council had changed dramatically. Rest periods were now built into every session. The chamber even had comfortable relaxation areas where members could take short breaks. The sleepless had not only accepted rest, they had mastered it. Our latest studies show a 40% improvement in decision-making across all government levels. Counselor May reported, standing well-rested at her post. The simple act of regular rest has made us stronger than we ever were before. The numbers told the story clearly. Sleepless ships reported fewer accidents. Factories made fewer mistakes. Research teams solved problems faster. Students learned better, all because they had learned to stop and rest. But perhaps our greatest gain, Rex continued, has been in understanding ourselves. In sleep, we have discovered parts of our minds we never knew existed. In dreams, we have found new ways of thinking. Walker remembered the early days of the crisis, the confusion, the fear, the stubborn pride that had nearly doomed the sleepless. Now, looking at the transformed council chamber, he could hardly believe it was the same civilization. "The humans have earned more than our gratitude," Rex announced. "From this day forward, Earth will have a permanent seat on the High Council. Their wisdom has proven greater than our technology." The chamber erupted in applause, something else that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. The sleepless had learned to express joy more freely since discovering rest. Their emotions, once tightly controlled, now flowed more naturally. After the ceremony, Walker found himself in the station's new meditation garden, another human addition that the sleepless had embraced. The same High Council member who had once mocked his need for sleep now sat with him, learning breathing exercises. "I had a dream last night," the council member told him. "I saw our civilization as it once was, always moving, never stopping, never growing. How did we not see how trapped we were?" Walker smiled. "Sometimes we need an outside perspective to see our own blind spots. Humans had to learn these lessons too, over thousands of years." The sleepless had even started developing their own sleep research. They discovered unique patterns in their rest cycles that differed from humans, leading to new insights about consciousness itself. Their ancient fear of mental stillness had transformed into scientific curiosity. As Walker prepared to return to Earth for a well-deserved vacation, he took one last look at the transformed station. The lights dimmed in regular cycles now. The halls had quiet periods. The constant hum of activity had been replaced by a gentler rhythm of work and rest. "You taught us that true strength comes from balance," Rex said during their farewell meeting. "We thought we were superior because we never stopped. Now we know that stopping, resting, and reflecting make us better than we ever were before." Walker nodded, remembering the long journey from mockery to understanding. The sleepless hadn't just survived their crisis. They had emerged stronger, wiser, and more humble. Their greatest weakness had become their greatest teacher. As his ship departed, Walker watched the station's lights dim for its night cycle. The mighty sleepless empire had learned the simple truth that every human child knew. Sometimes, the best way to move forward is to close your eyes and rest.